whether it's in our day-to-day feelings. Um, and the last one was, what's the last one? The last one is, oh, we're alone. We're ultimately alone. We have no companion. And so we went over those, and basically those can be summarized in as far as in terms of three sufferings, and that's described as the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and pervasive suffering. The suffering of suffering is outright suffering. That's just outright physical or mental pain. You know, no question about it. It's suffering. We all would agree on that. And then the suffering of change is that whatever we have that's good will change, and we will lose that. And that's the suffering of change. Whatever we have that's good, if we're eating a fabulous dinner, it will change at some point as if we eat it too much and we get full, and it no longer feels great anymore, so it instantly changes. And then pervasive suffering is this concept of having to die, and having to be reborn. But we'll talk about that. So it's a little bit you talk about these things, you start getting a little depressed, like you start doing these meditations, and I don't know, did you find them depressing in
I was depressed before.
Oh, you were depressed before, okay. So these didn't necessarily help, right?
Well, it seemed to verify my life experience.
Okay.
So, but yes, like we actually, in one of the other classes, one of the practitioners who has a really like long-term practice was saying that he started really experiencing these truths. Do you remember that? He said he like realized all the suffering of all the beings around him, and it was overwhelming. And so I think like even as you get deeper into it, really realizing that this is true can be overwhelming and saddening in probably a different way than I had felt before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But so what's nice about this particular class is that we're going to talk about another idea that is kind of a salve to that, it kind of cream to smooth out that sense of suffering. And what that is the second. So these are three principal teachings of Buddhism. The first one is gaining an understanding of that suffering, which is renunciation. The second path, which we're starting today, is gaining what's called the wish, which is gaining bodhicitta. And so that's what we get to talk about today. And that's at the end of the class. I'll tell you the meditation, and it's a very nice meditation when you're feeling very bad, when you start thinking about other people. And that's what bodhicitta is. So we're going to start with the word bodhicitta. So let's see. So bodhicitta is described as the wish to become enlightened for all beings. So you can study all the ACI courses out the wazoo. You can do all the Tantra courses, but you have to have these three principal paths. You have to have these three basic ideas, which is renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view. Correct view we'll do in the last two classes. We're going to do 2 classes now on the second path. But you have to really spend time on them and think about them, and especially meditate on them. That's the most important thing. I mean, we can collect all this information, and it's not going to help. You have to spend time on the cushion thinking about it. And just because we're on to the second path the first path is still, you know, it all takes time to get it, and to keep going back and starting over. There's a lot of starting over in understanding these. So we're going to talk about bodhicitta. So let me just write it on the board. Okay. So basically, what bodhicitta is so we've been talking about and trying to understand this concept of suffering in ourselves as it connects to ourselves. And so what bodhicitta is just taking that understanding of suffering and thinking about other people in that everybody else is feeling the same way that I'm feeling. You know, if I'm suffering, it really isn't that somebody else is not suffering. In some way or another, we all have this. You know, we delude ourselves to think somebody else isn't experiencing it, but we're all experiencing it. So bodhicitta is just taking this understanding of suffering that we're thinking of in relation to ourselves and focusing it on other people and having compassion for them, because we're all in this soup together. Yeah. So we're gaining compassion for other people, and it's the definition is to have the wish for enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, and that's tough. You know, that's tough. All beings are tough. I mean, we're talking about the ones you like. We're talking about the ones you don't much care about. And then there's the ones who make you totally crazy, and the ones you see harming others, and every permutation, right? And that's hard to do. So it's nice. It's okay. Start with somebody you really care about, and start there. What does that feel like? You know, when I'm with someone who's like not had a bad day, it's like it makes everything so much lighter. You know, it's just, I feel I can go on, you know. So bodhicitta. So the first part, bodhi, so this is Sanskrit. Bodhicitta is Sanskrit. Bodhi is, in Tibetan, is Chang. And Chitta is Sem. So this is Sanskrit. Chang Sem is Tibetan. Chang Sem is Tibetan. I think that getting the Tibetan is helpful in a number of different ways. It feels like it's kind of extra, but you'll see when we start talking about this how having some understanding of the Tibetan facilitates understanding the meaning of this. So Chang, the Chang is short for Changchub. Changchub means Buddha or Buddhahood. Changchub is Buddha. Can you see that okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you see? It's okay. And Sem is short for Semke. So this part here, the Chang, means to clean away. And the Chub part means to understand or to comprehend. The Sem of this part, Semke, means mind. And here, this is what's interesting. The K means to develop or to grow. So what the Buddha has is the Buddha has, they've cleaned up all their negativities, and they understand everything. They are omniscient. They know all things in one moment. They're not omnipotent. A Buddha is not omnipotent. A Buddha can't do all things. A Buddha can know all things. They've cleaned away all their bad things, and they know all things of the past, present, and future, in ultimate and relative reality in a single moment. And we'll talk about all that. We'll get to that. But a Buddha is not omnipotent, because if if they could take away our suffering, they would have. And we're suffering, so there's something, that they can't do that way. Okay. So, so we have this word here that is Bodhichitta, Changsem. So does this mean that, so do you think that you could say that if you have this Bodhi mind, that you are necessarily a Buddha? Does this mean that if you're a Bodhisattva, so a person, I should say this, a person who has Bodhicitta, a person who has the wish to become enlightened for the sake of all beings, that person is a Bodhisattva. We call that person a Bodhisattva. So a person who has that wish to become enlightened, is that the same? Can you say that if you have Bodhi mind, that you have the mind of a Buddha? Do you think? No.
No.
And I think there's a confusion there, because some people sometimes there's this idea that we're saying that you are a Buddha if you have bodhicitta. But this is where it helps to understand the Tibetan, because this part here, K, means to develop or to grow. So what this is basically you have this wish, you have bodhicitta, and this is how you grow it into being a Buddha. So you're using this mind, you're developing this mind of having this wish for all beings, and it brings you to Buddhahood. So you're not a Buddha yet. It doesn't mean Buddha's mind. It means that mind that's being developed.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and it seems to me that it's kind of difficult to disentangle the direct perception of bodhicitta, or the direct experience of bodhicitta, with the direct perception of emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know the operational definitions are different, but it seems that you can only really gain bodhicitta if you have an understanding of karma and emptiness.
Well, we're going to be talking about that.
Okay.
I think to address what you're saying in general is because I remember in thinking of going through the three principal paths, and thinking, okay, well, I need to get renunciation first, and then I will get bodhicitta, and then I will get correct view, and it doesn't seem to work like that. It seems to work that you keep dipping in, and one facilitates the other. So I think when you're talking about correct view, that helps you to have bodhicitta. But that's one of the things we're going to talk about the direct perception of emptiness, and maybe that's coming up next. Let's see. So, when do you become a bodhisattva? So you were maybe thinking it connected to a direct perception of emptiness, right?
Well, no. When you become a bodhisattva, it's when you have cultivated the wish
Right.
to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, no, we can get to my question later.
Okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
But
I know.
so you become a bodhisattva when you have bodhicitta, but before that, they talk about having sugarcane bodhicitta. It's sweet and hollow. It's like, you have to play with these things. I mean, I think it's with all of these ideas in all of these courses, is that you have to keep playing with it. You have to play with all of the ideas, and you have to say, well, okay, well, maybe, what if, let me experiment with that, let me consider that as, I'm going to play with that. I don't have to believe in it. I'm just going to check it out and see if it makes sense, if my experience verifies it. And so that's with bodhicitta also, like how, what, is it really, what does that mean to actually have that kind of compassion for other people? So there is this sugarcane bodhicitta where you get introduced to the idea and you start playing with it, like, how does this feel? And then because it's hard to get it's hard to get this. This is not, I mean, it's easy to get intellectually, and it's hard to get it viscerally. It's hard to get all of this stuff viscerally, right? So it's described as being an incredibly strong state of mind. And so you become a bodhisattva when you have this incredibly strong state of mind of this wish to become enlightened in order to for other people. Like, how can you help somebody? I mean, if you've ever tried to help somebody you cared about, it's very easy to come into a brick wall, so yeah. So let's see. So this wish is not a wishy-washy wish. It's a wish with a capital W. It's the wish, because you'll hear it described as the wish. So then the next question is, has every bodhisattva had a direct perception of emptiness? We're going to get to this concept of correct view of emptiness. There's an intellectual understanding of it, and then there's a direct perception of it, a very visceral understanding of this. And so, no, you don't need a direct perception of emptiness to be a bodhisattva. You can be a bodhisattva before you have a direct perception of emptiness.
I have a question. Does everyone here know what direct perception of emptiness is?
Well,
I think
it's a whole...
Yeah. Just because I don't really recognize anyone, so it might be...
okay.
No, a lot of people haven't been here too. We haven't got to it yet.
Oh, we haven't gotten to it?
No, that's why I was like...
Well, no, I mean, it's the last two classes.
Oh.
But emptiness is basically just as an intellectual understanding. It's that understanding that nothing has any nature from its own side. Um, we haven't got there, but so you can have some understanding that there's not anything that has any quality from its own side, that it takes um, your it takes you, it takes um, your perceiving it, your um, uh, experiencing it to have it be any particular way that it is, but it does, by its own side, from its own side, it doesn't have any quality of being the thing that you think it has. It's empty of having any nature of its own. So you know, we talk about it a lot, and it can be understood on an intellectual level, and it then needs to be in meditation understood on a visceral level. So we'll get there, and it's beautiful. So try to come and get that. But we can't do it too much in this class, because this class is about bodhicitta. But it's if you have a this, so first you have in Buddhism we describe 5 paths. So you have what's called the path of accumulation. You start having some understanding of the suffering of this life, and you have you start getting some kind of renunciation. Then the next path is the path of preparation, where you start having some intellectual understanding of this concept of emptiness, this concept that there's not anything that has any nature from its own side. Nothing has any, it doesn't have any quality that you're assigning to it from its own side. You're assigning that quality to it. That's the second path, where you have some intellectual understanding of emptiness. The third path is where you see it directly. The fourth path is where you've seen this thing directly, you've had an experience of this thing directly, but we're so we have such strong habits of seeing things the wrong way, you know, like that person who really annoys me is annoying from their own side. Like we have such a strong sense that that annoying person doesn't have anything to do with me. I didn't have anything to do with making that annoying person. We have such strong habits of holding on to that those things outside of us are really that way. That the fourth path is just getting used to this idea of having seen emptiness directly. And the fifth path is called no more learning. I mean, the point of this class is not to go into this whole thing, but just to give a framework for it, right? So depending on which we say track, which track you're on, you can become, if you're on what's called a Hinayana track, which according to the Mahayana is a lower track, we would say you would have achieved nirvana if you got to this fifth path. You would be called an arhat. You had seen emptiness directly. You had habituated yourself to this thing that you saw, and you would have achieved nirvana. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit, and that's why I mentioned that, the 5 paths, and that you would get to nirvana. But so just in terms of this class and what it means to be a bodhisattva is that you can be this person who has this incredible wish to want to become enlightened for all sentient beings without having had this incredible experience of what we're talking about, this direct perception of emptiness. So they say that you can have that. You can be a bodhisattva without having this other direct perception of emptiness. Is everyone, tell me, is everyone okay, or what? Please,
So
say
to me it seems like, being a bodhisattva is actually pretty basic and accessible to anyone. So if you just have a wish, so if you're just in this class, you could consider yourself to be bodhisattva.
Well, they describe it as that would be more like sugarcane bodhicitta, I would say. It's and we can't know what's in anybody else's heart.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, when you first start thinking about it, you have something that's it feels kind of good, and that's nice, but it's described as being like almost a physical, you have a physical sensation of some kind of very strong physical sensation when you get it, and it's been described as you know you have it when you have it, and it takes cultivation. So actually the purpose of this particular class today is to talk about it and to talk about the benefit of it. The next class we do is to talk about how to get it. So I mean, I don't know if I would say it's basic. It's very difficult to really cultivate it so that you have it very strongly, as
So it's not just mentally wishing for something, but viscerally feeling it as well.
I think it's probably both. Like you first have to start thinking, you're thinking of it mentally, and then it becomes something that becomes much more of a that just becomes such a strong sensation for you.
Mm-hmm.
And they describe it like, that the lamas are very suspicious if you're somebody you're saying you have the wish, you have the wish, it's this capital W, you have the wish. But if you're not actually, because you have this wish, you want to bring everyone out of suffering, right? You want to bring people out of samsara. But it's a little suspicious, the lamas say, if you're not actually helping people on a day-to-day basis. Like if you don't give your seat on the subway to someone who looks like they need it, or any of these little things. And those are the things that are hard to do, too. Like a lot of those things are very hard to do. So, so you can watch yourself as well. You can see where you are in that way too.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed is that if I do try to meditate, I feel like I could get to that state for
Mm-hmm.
maybe a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But then to maintain that
Mm-hmm.
for more than even just a few minutes
Mm-hmm.
is very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the thing of just, that's why they call it a practice. This is a practice, because you have to, you just have to keep, you keep going backwards, and then you have to remind yourself again and have things that support that, and ways to trick yourself into doing and thinking about things in a certain way. And that's what's so important about doing meditation. I mean, meditation, I mean, we did, you know, do 15 minutes a day, just like every day, just 15 minutes. Or if you can't do that, then start with 5, just whatever you can do. You know, people are busy, start with 5 minutes, and then every month increase it by a minute, you know, and just you establish a habit, and then you take any of these ideas, you take them in your mind, and then you can tear them apart, you know, like you hear something, you think that's bullshit, but in the privacy of your own mind, you can say that, and then you can tear a thing apart and find the holes in any of this stuff. You've got to look for the holes and have it make sense. And meditation is habituating yourself to those things, and then it's also habituating yourself to more constantly being able to hold on to that, you know, once you determine that it makes sense. Yeah. So I'm going to keep going on, but it's something.
Yeah, you have a question, huh? So your first goal is to attain that wish to help, you know, the collective society, I guess. So you have to put that in practice, I would say. That would be the next step.
Yeah.
And you do that through your relationships or work?
Well, and we'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about, there's very specific ways that are described here, in this book and in other books too, about it's about developing the wish. I mean, so we talk about developing the wish. You know, the purpose of today's class is to talk about why you would even want to do it. That's the point of today's class, and we're going to get to in a little bit what are the benefits of doing this. There's 9 different benefits. In this particular tradition, there's lots of 3 of this and 6 of this and 9 of that, and you know. So we'll talk about the 9 benefits today. Yeah, but it would certainly connect to how you're dealing with people in your life on an everyday basis. Yeah.
So isn't, because I was taught before that a bodhisattva is somebody who has reached enlightenment already, and they dedicate their life to helping others, like kind of like what Catholics might call like a saint. It's not that, but like, isn't that right?
Well, a bodhisattva, I mean, there's probably different there's enlightenment, there's a lower enlightenment, and there's what we call then, it's something that is called a totally enlightened being. So a bodhisattva is not totally enlightened. A bodhisattva needs to have this other experience of direct perception of emptiness. The bodhisattva needs to understand the nature of reality. And you can be a bodhisattva before you have this understanding of reality, but you're not a Buddha yet. You don't have all of those, you don't have everything in place yet to be a Buddha. But that's, you know, but you're in the making there, but not yet.
But can you also be a bodhisattva after the direct perception of emptiness?
Yeah, and that's what's described as the first bodhisattva bhumi.
Okay.
Right? So you're a bodhisattva, so you have bodhicitta. You have the wish to become enlightened, and it's beautiful how they describe it. At some point, this wish is described as you're being imbued with it, like you're imbued with feeling this love for and compassion for other people, and you have that, and then you have what's described as this direct perception of emptiness in meditation, right? Understanding the nature of reality, And because you're imbued with this wish, and you have the direct perception of emptiness, you then go to the first bodhisattva bhumi, right? You've heard of the bodhisattva bhumis, right? That's how you get to the first bodhisattva bhumi, is with being saturated with this state of mind and then having the direct perception of emptiness. Yeah. Yeah.
Can that state of mind be taken away from you?
No, it's interesting. It's interesting that you asked that, because we're going to get to it. It's actually one of the benefits. So when we get there, I'll point it out to you. But no, essentially, once you have it, you have it. But we'll get to that in the benefits of it. So let's see. So what I'd like to do is just take a short break now. I think Rachel, I think that's let's just get up, stand up for your rights, and then we'll just come back in 5 minutes or something.
Sounds good.
Okay.